That's very good. So if there's one thing that I know about technical communicators, it's that we are a tenacious bunch of people, right? We have to be strong. We have to be convicted, and we have to be assertive. We have to be really, really strong with our opinions, or we will be ignored. And we know this. So we are tenacious for a reason. And I would never ask you to lose your tenacity. What I will talk about today is, are you being tenacious? Are you sticking to your ideas in the right times and for the right causes? So today we're going to talk about a few trends. I'm using the third button down. There we go. All right. So today we're going to talk about 3 trends. And none of these trends is inherently bad. They all started for a reason. But what I want you to do today is question whether these trends still hold value for your organization. The theme of this conference is spanning silos, building bridges. So let's start with silos. We love to blame silos for all of our communication issues and all of our process issues in our organizations, right? Yes. Thank you for answering. What I'm going to tell you today is that silos aren't going anywhere. And I actually think, nor should they. There may be a reason for silos. And in order to understand why, we need to know what silos are and why they exist. So silos are really just social networks. They're groups of people that interact and have relationships based on the departments they work in or the projects they work on. Think about your organizational chart. A standard org chart shows vertical networks of people that have similar objectives and functions. People who work together closely develop close interpersonal relationships. Whether you turn this chart upside down, tilt it sideways, or rearrange it in circles, social networks exist. No matter how you organize masses of people around organizational objectives, there will always be interactions and commonalities between people based on function, geography, market, program, and goals. What do these social networks do for us? Well, they provide organization, they provide focus, they provide expertise, and they provide a controlled flow of information. So why is it then that we blame silos for our communication issues? Well, we can blame these guys. There are 2 social theorists that back in 1984 did a study. So Peter Blau and Joseph Schwartz did this study on the impact of boundaries. And they looked specifically at class, race, and religious affiliation. They wanted to know how these different boundaries impacted communication among people within the individual groups. And of course, they found that organizational boundaries stopped the flow of information. And relieving the organizational boundaries meant that more messages flowed across. So this provided us scientific evidence that we should blame silos. And we love that. Of course, organizational theorists look at this and said, we want in on that. So they said, based on these findings, if we break down silos within our enterprises, then information will flow better within the enterprise. Now fast forward to 2015. That was a very slow fast forward. It took a lot of time to get through the years. So there's another theorist, Damon Centola, who is at the University of Pennsylvania. And he wanted to study this further. And he did a lot of research, specifically within the realm of organizations and networks, and looked at social networks. And what he found actually supported Blau and Schwartz's findings for simple information that requires one contact for transmission. This is stuff that once you hear it, you can't unknow it. So simple information means breaking news, sports scores, who won the latest reality TV show. These are things that really go very quickly across unsiloed organizations. What he found is that the same is not true for complex ideas. And for us, that means things like adoption of tools and processes, training, content strategy, architecture, things that are really, really difficult to understand. What his research showed was that complex concepts are more readily integrated across organizations through strong social ties to various departments. So the departments created a loyalty that allowed us to get complex ideas across to people more effectively. So what we call silos can actually help us to transmit understanding of and gain adoption for these complex ideas. In other words, the loyalty to the smaller group can actually work in our favor when trying to disseminate difficult concepts. And hopefully this feels true to you. The question then becomes, how do we then spread those complex ideas from one silo to another? And according to Santola, it's all about the bridges. But for Santola, the key is the size of the bridge. So bridges are formed when one group of people, or people within one group, also belong to another. So let's simplify this. Let's say that we have two groups, and each of these groups has 1,000 people. If 10 people simultaneously belong to both groups, that's a very, very narrow bridge, and we would consider this to be very segregated. On the other hand, if 900 people simultaneously belong to both groups, then there's a lack of segregation needed for people within either group to have strong social ties to one group or the other. According to Santola, there's a sweet spot, and that sweet spot is somewhere on the lower end. On the lower end of this, we have enough separation to have loyalty, but the bridge is wide enough for strong transmission of ideas across the silos. So with Santola's research, we now know that we should not try to break down silos, but that we should focus on building appropriate size bridges. So let's move to the next trend, the one-size-fits-all process. Manufacturing and logistics organizations worldwide understand that in a long process, having people specialize in specific tasks and removing variation increases the employee's ability to do that task more efficiently and with fewer defects. Intuitively, no one can argue this. The more you do a task, the better you get at it. In factories, removing variation is a really great thing. So let's move this concept to our large worldwide content development process. The natural takeaway here is that now we're going to have a team of people that write stuff, a team of people that edit it, a team that code it, a team that adds maybe conditions for marketplace or other variations. We have a team of people doing peer reviews. We have a team translating, a team reviewing the translations, and another team publishing. If we do this, it's amazing we get through our process in 100 days. So if factories can create cars from scratch in a few hours, if fulfillment centers can pick, pack, sort, and ship large orders in less than an hour, why does it take 100 days for a global team using similar methods to publish fully localized set of content? Let's make the assumption right off the bat that people are working at an optimized level. In my experience, it's not usually a matter of people aren't working fast enough. In fact, in analyzing the value chain, the steps that actually add value tend to take a couple days or less. It's the non-value-adding handoffs that suck up the most time. So think about this. If you have 8 handoffs, and each handoff is taking between 1 and 5 days, that's between 8 and 40 days in your process right there, just in handoffs. So what's the difference between the fully Six Sigma, lean, standard work process that leads to efficiency for factories and fulfillment centers, but might not necessarily work for us? They have large conveyor belts. They have software that has unique identifiers for every piece within their system. They have RF technology that reads things as they go through. A person does his or her specialty and then puts it onto the conveyor belt, and the system automatically carries it to the place it's supposed to be next. The picker doesn't have to worry about who's packing the stuff. The person adding the steering wheel has no idea who's adding the tires. The conveyance system handles handoffs hyper efficiently, allowing people to focus on whatever it is they do. So if we want to remove time spent on content handoffs, we need an incredibly smart conveyance system that not only places the content in queue for the next appropriate person, but also prioritizes the piece of content and sorts it according to any dependencies. When we talk to our CMS vendors, the goal needs to be real-time conveyance of our topic IDs from one step to the next, accounting for delivery deadlines, dependencies, and priorities. In other words, we need our CMS to operate like a robot. So talk to your CMS vendors about that. Now, of course, some of us can't get that hyper efficient with our handoffs. That's just the nature of it. So plan B, of course, is to eliminate handoffs. The best way I found to do this is through a content scrum. And in a content scrum, the scrum commits to doing all of those functions without handing off to another team. It's important to note that this does not mean a writer sitting on a dev scrum. This means a self-managed content scrum that operates as a unit, learning together how to more efficiently produce content. This requires, of course, that the team understands the values of Scrum, and that we all understand that just saying you're doing sprints or saying that you're doing stand-ups does not mean you're necessarily doing Scrum. So the next trend, ownership. Have you ever asked someone what their role is and they say, I own global sales, or I own content quality? Why do you think they use the word own? Probably because someone at some time gave them advice where they said, don't tell people what you do, tell people what you own. So think about this. Has anyone heard that before? Yeah, a few people? Okay, this is terrible advice. Don't take it. If I come up and say, if someone asks me what my role is and I say, I own global content delivery for seller support at Amazon, what's going through their head? Right? That's not to say don't use the word own. Of course we need to own things. Own things that are difficult. Own things that are uncomfortable. Own your goals, own your tasks, and absolutely own your mistakes, but leave territory out of it. So today we've talked about 3 trends: silos, the one-size-fits-all process, and loosely using the word own. If you're clinging to any of these trends, then you're keeping yourself average. Learn to stand out from the crowd. Embrace silos as social networks and build appropriate size bridges. Automate or eliminate handoffs, and definitely talk to your CMS vendors about the conveyance of your topic IDs. Lastly, own your mistakes and other difficult things. And if you can do these things, you will start to stand out from the crowd. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of the conference.